May 17th, Oronoco Township Planning Advisory Commission meeting to order. Would you please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you for that. Is this recording?
Yes.
Due to federal, state, and local public health emergency declarations regarding COVID-19, public hearings will be held electronically as permitted by Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. Physical attendance at the public hearing shall be severely restricted due to COVID-19 health concerns for individual health and social distancing protocol shall be strictly enforced for those who still choose to attend in person. Just want to get that out of the way. Moving on, the next item is to set the order of agenda. We have approval of the minutes from our April 19th meeting. We have one public hearing tonight, OR 2020-001 plat, which is the final plat for Sunset Bay Ridge subdivision, followed by discussion items, other business, and adjournment. Any additions, changes, or corrections?
If you want to add, after your discussion, we're going to talk about the shoreland ordinance update.
Okay, we will add that shoreland ordinance update as a discussion item. Any other changes? I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I move we approve the agenda.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion by Ms. Smith and a second by Ms. Flood to approve the agenda. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Minutes from our last meeting.
I just had one change, which was on page 4. The second paragraph, I think I asked for a comparison of size for the proposed condo units, not the building itself. I think the condo units were the size of a convenience store, is what Christy told us. That's it. Nothing serious.
Okay, so we have one correction on page 4 of the packet. The second paragraph, Ms. Smith asked for comparison of size for the proposed condo units. Any other changes or corrections?
I'll move to approve the minutes with the one change.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rucker and a second by Mr. Albrecht to approve the minutes with that one change. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, our public hearing tonight. Let me get to that page. Okay, we have Oronoco Township Final Plat OR 2020-001 PLAT by John Kingsley. The request is for final plat approval for the creation of 6 low-density, single-family rural residential lots and 2 outlets. The property is located in the southwest quarter of the northwest quarter of Section 2 in Oronoco Township at 13036 and 13024 Sunset Bay Road Northeast. Christy, you have the floor. This is pretty fancy technology we got
Okay.
now.
So we're here to talk about the final plat OR 2020-001 PLAT by John Kingsley. The owner is John Kingsley. It's located on Sunset Bay Road Northeast in Section 2 of Oronoco Township. It was rezoned March 1st, 2021 to R1 by the Oronoco Town Board. They did update their preliminary plat which was required as a condition of the preliminary plat, and that was updated before they made it to the town board meeting. So they met all of the conditions of the preliminary plat except for the two that were ongoing, which we'll cover later on. But that shaded area that you're seeing on the map, that is the bluff impact zone. Otherwise, the plat is for 6 residential lots and 2 outlots. The final plat, they've still marked that bluff line. I'm not exactly sure if that will continue to the Mylars. I don't know if the county surveyor will like that line on the final plat. We always require it on the preliminary plat, and those kind of natural features don't always make it on the final plat. And so that's kind of up to the county surveyor if that line will remain. But they're showing it as we have asked, so that's all we've asked for. They have changed the lot size of outlot A, which was one of the sticking points. There was a meets and bounds that allowed it to be 99.99 feet wide, and to meet shoreline ordinance regulations, they couldn't shrink that any less than what it was. And so it remains at 99.99 feet wide as we had requested. Your job as the planning commission is to hold a public hearing and make the final determination. And then once you make the final determination on the final plat, the applicant will prepare the Mylars, and those Mylars will then go to the town board for final signatures.
So we're making a recommendation.
Well, you're making the determination at this point. Your subdivision ordinance says that you are the determining board for the final plat, but the town board signs the final plat. So they'll still see the final plat. You're making the decision on it tonight. So planning staff recommendation, we had 4 findings. The final plat for Sunset Bay Ridge complies with the provision of the Oronoco Township zoning ordinance. It complies with the provisions of the subdivision ordinance. It's supported by the land use plan, and it'll be creating infill development within an existing suburban subdivided area. So planning staff is recommending approval of the Sunset Bay Ridge subdivision based on the findings of fact, and with the following 2 conditions: that a lot combination form must be submitted to property records along with the final plat to combine block 1, lot 4 without lot A. And then the second condition is to combine block 1, lot 6 without lot B. And without that combination form, those lots will not be combined. And then lot 4 and lot 6 would be non-conforming lots. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Any questions for Christie? Otherwise, I'll go ahead and open the public hearing and we can have more discussion later. All right, well, I will go ahead and open the public hearing.
And it looks like Tom Walker has his hand raised.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this is Bill Toynton with Tom Walker, and I'd like to speak on behalf of our client and the applicant for the plat, the Kingsleys. We made some adjustments on the plat, as Christie has mentioned, so we're really down to completing the combination of parcels. And I have filled those forms out. We will be submitting them with the final plat to the county recorder's office. I actually can't execute those until the county recorder assigns a parcel identification number to each of the parcels. So that's the reason it's not complete in advance of the plat. I have to wait until the final plat gets approved. The Mylars are made and signed, get them down to the recorder's office, and then I can hand her the forms and we can complete filling out the parcel numbers. So we are in agreement with the 2 conditions, and ask for your approval of the final plat with the 2 conditions.
Thank you, Bill. John, is John here? Did you want
Kingsley, right here.
to add anything?
No, if I add something, it might make it worse, so, I'm on the sidelines here watching.
Your
magic
attorney said to
happen.
not say anything, not
Yeah.
testify in your defense.
I'm pretty good at shooting myself in the foot here, so no, I think it's perfect, and I'd like to say thank you for getting this far, so.
Okay. Well, this is a public hearing, so I will ask 3 times if there's anybody that would like to speak for or against this application.
Well, I'm a close neighbor. And
Can you step up to the podium and then
Yes,
state
absolutely. My name is
your,
Dale Mergen.
state your name and address?
I live in the neighborhood on Sunset Bay Lane, opposed to Sunset Bay Road,
And what's your address?
13331 Sunset Bay Lane Northeast,
Thank you.
just around the corner. And I think that this is going to be a wonderful addition to the neighbor. I know all the neighbors. I've been there since 1978. There is no one in that neighborhood that has had an objection. That's all I want to say. Okay.
Always good to hear. Thank you. Okay, I will ask a second time if there's anybody that would like to speak for or against this application. Nobody else, right?
Nope.
Last call, anybody that would like to speak for or against this application? All right, with that, I will close the public hearing. Discussion, questions? Ideas, motions? So the 2 forms that you mentioned in the 2 findings, requirements, conditions, by doing that, it will make those 2 both conforming,
Correct.
even though they're across the road,
Correct.
right?
Correct. Yep. And what Mr. Toyton had stated about submitting those after the plat is recorded is correct. Those parcel numbers have to be created in order to combine the parcels. So everything he said, we agree with.
So that'll just run in parallel with
Correct.
all the other stuff.
So we don't have to have that done before we can approve.
You can't. You can't. There's no way to combine those parcels until they're created. That's why they're conditions.
I mean, we'd have to wait, God knows how long for the paperwork to get done.
Well, I didn't know if it was a requirement.
So that is an interesting question. So, I know Bill will get it done. I'm not worried about it, but how do we track that or make sure that it does get done?
They can't pull any building permits on those lots until that is completed. So if it wasn't completed, and those lots were separated, we would say that you would have to combine those
So
lots.
you would
before
catch it when they come in for building
Exactly.
permits.
Yeah.
Refresh my memory on outlots A and B. Those are for 6 and 4
Correct,
that give them lake access.
correct,
It's not building.
correct.
Does that give an automatic easement then for the road? Is that how that?
The easement is in place for the road. The road,
It already is.
it already is, yes.
Any other questions?
Can they build docks and stuff on the outlets?
Yes,
They can't, okay. But they can't build a structure of some kind, a house or,
Boat shed or something.
they may be able to, water-oriented structures are allowed. So they may be able to build a shed or a shop. I don't believe that it would be large enough to meet the setbacks for a dwelling.
But if they want to put a little shed down there to keep their life jackets and stuff, they can do that. Should be able to do that.
Are boat houses, to keep your boat in, are they allowed off of any of that?
We currently don't have boathouse language in our shoreland ordinance. The shoreland ordinance that that's in front of you does have language about boathouses.
Okay.
Can you put campers or things like that on these lots, these outlots, or this is just basically for lake access?
If somebody's parking a recreational vehicle, I don't believe we have a setback requirement if it's just for personal use. And I would have to look at the R1 standards to see if there are any requirements for setbacks from the road or where those could be stored.
Some of my neighbors stored them along the river and then they got washed away.
Well, I think following Lori's question, we don't want the houses back here and then they're renting out the other side of the road by the water to somebody else. But for personal use, they could.
Correct.
Well, if there's no more questions, I would entertain a motion.
I'd make a motion to approve the final plat for Sunset Bay Ridge subdivision based on staff findings and the staff recommendations.
Second that.
I have a motion by Mr. Lacy and a second by Mr. Rucker to approve the final plat based on staff findings and conditions. Any other comments before I call the vote? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. There you go. Okay, our next item is shoreland ordinance update. And you have a giant packet of information in front of you. So, Christie, I'm guessing that's you again?
Yeah, so you may be aware that we have been, so in 2017, we adopted new floodplain maps and we had to incorporate those into our ordinances, both in Olmsted County and Oronoco Township. And in that process, DNR said, your shoreland ordinance is wildly out of date. So the history of the shoreland ordinance is it was incorporated in the county in 1982. And when Oronoco created their own zoning ordinance, you basically adopted it in whole with your specific change of the river corridor district. Otherwise, it's completely the same. And the 1982 ordinance has never been updated. Meanwhile, state statutes and rules have changed over the years. And
Can you just give a quick highlight of what that river corridor was?
Yes.
Charlie, I think, is probably the only one that was around when we did that.
Yep, so the river corridor district establishes an overlay 1,000 feet from the Zumbro River that applies shoreland standards within that 1,000 feet, no matter what the shoreland overlay is. And it specifically says certain uses are not permitted within that district.
Because normally it's what?
300 feet.
300 feet.
Yep, 300 feet from the river portion. Lake Zumbro has 1,000-foot setback, or 1,000-foot radius. So it extended the radius for the river portion and just applies shoreline standards within that area, as well as not allowing specific uses like landfills, junkyards. There's talk of manure spreading and kind of industrial uses. So that's been incorporated into these proposed changes. So what we've prepared for you today is just, so our Okay, back up. I have so many thoughts running through my head. So our shoreland ordinance has worked through the county. It is going to the county board for their final determination tomorrow. And if they approve it as recommended, it'll be effective June 1st. And so we have compared the changes for the county to Oronoco Township zoning ordinance and incorporated the changes into your ordinance. And that's the documents that are in front of you. So the articles that are changing is 1, 2, 4, and 9. And basically Article 1 is general provisions. And that's any changes in there are just housekeeping in nature. There's nothing major or substantive in there. Article 2 is rules and definitions. There you will see we have added some images to help support the definitions, like on page 2-9 under bluff. There are a couple images of what a bluff impact zone is, the areas that we're measuring in a bluff impact zone. And then the next image is there's an exception to bluff impact zones. And so that's a figure. Yep, that's a figure to show what the exceptions are.
So basically wherever there's like a track change, that's the new stuff.
Yep.
And everything in black is the old stuff.
Exactly. One thing I did notice in rules was that there were a couple of non-shoreland definitions that you didn't have in your ordinance. And I just think that they were maybe accidental omissions, like adult. Adult was not defined in your ordinance, but it was in ours. And some of them did have to do with like group homes. There was a transitional housing, I want to say. It was developmentally disabled was not defined.
So the stuff in red.
In red, everything in red is what is being added or deleted. Yep. If it's crossed out, it's being deleted. Like home occupation's being deleted because we added home business instead. And that was just because that's how it was called out in the county's ordinance.
So basically this mirrors what the county board will see tomorrow.
Yes, yep,
Except for our river corridor.
exactly. Yep, but you still have your river corridor. And it is defined in Article 2. So it's land located within 1,000 feet from the ordinary high water level or the landward extent of a floodplain designated by ordinance, whichever is greater for the following bodies of water. And so it's South Fork of the Zumbro River, Middle Fork of the Zumbro River, Lake Zumbro, and the South Branch Middle Fork of the Zumbro River. And so it's essentially applying, so that's the defined area. And then in Article 9, the shoreline and floodplain article is where you define those restricted uses. So Article 4 is conditional uses, variances, and the changes there are fairly minimal as well. There's some moving around of findings. We had a finding that when deciding a conditional use permit in the A1, A2, A3 district was kind of at the end of our findings, and there was some shoreland and floodplain in between. And so we just felt like it made more sense to move that above the shoreland and floodplain stuff, because you're probably going to have a conditional use permit in the agricultural district more often than you would in the shoreland. And if you recall some of our staff reports, when we're making findings, we say these don't apply. So that would make sense to have shoreline and floodplain be at the end in case they don't apply. And then that's about it in section 4. And Article 9 is the big changes. A lot of the red, some of the red is just moving around. DNR provided us with a model ordinance and they had things in a specific area. So we maybe moved some things around just to mimic kind of their order of organization. We added use tables and I added your river corridor district as a column in your use table so that you could see easily what is permitted, conditionally permitted, and not permitted within that river corridor area. And that those uses were based on section 9.12 A. I'm on, it's not labeled,
Yeah.
but it's like right in the middle of that Article 9. Yep. It's a table with four columns. It's table 9.11D2 is the table I'm talking about. And then the river corridor districts in
Okay.
section 9.12.
So it's got transition, agriculture, tributary, and river corridor.
Yep.
Hey, Christy, is there anything about camping on here? Because I've heard of some people now sort of like Airbnb their land for camping. Have you run across? I haven't heard of it here, but I like down in like Houston County, I've heard of some of that happening.
So we do have campground provisions in section 10 of the ordinance. I believe it's Article 10, where we talk about campgrounds. Department of Health determines that you're a campground if you have 5 units.
Okay.
Typically, we have not regulated less than 5 units. We have issued temporary conditional use permits, like when they were dredging Lake Zumbro, we issued a temporary conditional use permit because they had moved some trailers in to house the workers out there. But no, we haven't been approached about rental properties for
So it's no big deal if somebody posts like, hey, I have some riverfront property, come
I'm not
pitch your
gonna
tent and
say
pay me
it's
$20.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say
I mean,
it's
I
no
don't-
big deal because we're not even up to speed on Airbnbs in general. We don't mention whether or not you can rent your house out. And if people ask, we say, well, it's not mentioned, therefore it's not allowed. But we know that there are existing VRBOs and vacation rentals.
See, I would have thought it's the other way. If it's not mentioned, it is allowed.
No, so the standard in your zoning is if it's not mentioned, it's a non-permitted use.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
That's a good thing to know.
yeah. The other big addition in here, so there's provisions for controlled access lots. That's part of just what's out there in state statute that we didn't have. A controlled access lot is for boating when you have a group, like group docking system. It just has requirements for how much frontage you need to have and how many watercraft vehicles are allowed.
Is that all in that ordinance? How many, like you're talking about, is that all gonna be in there?
It is, yeah, it's proposed, yep, it's,
That's gonna be a lot for the town board to absorb. I mean,
well, it's currently in state statute, so if we review a subdivision that has a controlled access lot or a group docking system, DNR has directed us to look at those provisions already, like Zimbro Haven. Those provisions were applied to Zimbro Haven, even though they weren't in the ordinance. So, but now they'll actually be in the ordinance. The other thing is planned unit developments we added. And so planned unit developments are in DNR's mind, and the way that they're proposed here are shoreland planned unit developments. And they're described as commercial and residential. And anytime you have a subdivision in the shoreland area, it is a planned unit development. And so there are regulations for how dense, how many homes can be located in that area. And there's different tiers depending on how far back from the waterway you are. And the further back from the waterway, the more dense you can be. So anytime we have shoreland plats currently, DNR has to approve those first and they review those planned unit development standards. We've incorporated it into our ordinances, so that way we kind of take the ownership back of that review. So that way we can work with landowners when they're wanting to make these applications so that they understand what their densities are before they make their application. So that way they're not creating a subdivision and then they get to the DNR stage and find out they're too dense.
So does that happen before we even see it then?
So currently it happens before you see it. It kind of happens during that referral period because the referral gets sent to the area hydrologist and she'll review it against the PUD standards, and it can hold up applications. Oronoco Estates is a good example of one that she really needed more information from them to be able to determine if they met the PUD standards. And so what incorporating those regulations into our ordinance, we get that ownership back so that we have the control. DNR gets back into their referral role of reviewing applications, but not having to make that approval. It is a higher standard, so you can decide we don't want to do this and not incorporate it into your ordinance. If that's the case, the county will still have it in ours, but it would open it up to DNR having to approve it first before you did.
Where is that at?
It's at the end of the ordinance, so it starts at section 9.17.
This is stricter than it used to be, or what?
It's not stricter. What it is it has been applied in Oronoco Township. Again, I think it was the names. I have a hard time with the names, but it's the townhome development right on the lake.
Sandy Point.
Yep, Sandy Point. In their special district language, they incorporate the PUD standards. And so it's been applied. Now it's just going to be in the ordinance so that you're not just applying state rules, you're applying the sections of your ordinance.
So then after we take a look at it, then it will go to the town board for final approval.
Yep. So the timeline that I'm looking at is tonight I would like you to initiate the zone change, the text amendment for shoreland. We can bring this back next month for a public hearing. And then if you make a recommendation next month, then it can go to the July town board meeting. That's why I worked hard on getting it to you tonight.
Yeah, and unless there's some urgency, I would say if we don't have any applications for June, let's put it on the agenda whenever we have something else.
Okay.
You know, unless there's some urgency, I know that wouldn't fit with your timeline then, but.
There's not an urgency. We are expecting an application to come in this week for a June, to be on your June
So we'll
agenda.
probably have a meeting.
You probably will. Yep.
All right, well, you guys got your homework cut out for you.
Yeah.
So we should.
The good news is
do all this?
it's highlighted what's actually changing. So if you know our shoreland ordinance, you can skip over a lot of it.
So our homework is to read through the changes and see if we have any questions or comments about it. Okay,
You sure can do that.
and if we don't understand anything, should we email you? So
For
that
sure.
We don't waste, okay.
Yeah, for
Okay.
sure. I'm happy to answer any questions offline.
Yep, and then we can actually cover them at the next meeting too, so everybody gets a chance to. But, so yeah, the other articles don't have changes, just these four.
Just these four. Yep.
Is there another print copy of that? This, you got that one.
No, you can have it. Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, I read it already.
You got it memorized. You can have mine. I just grabbed this one just so I had something to talk to him about. So if you want it, Mr. Kingsley, you sure can have it.
I'll read it tonight again.
We'll expect you back next month.
Sounds good.
We're giving these to our grandkids.
Right, okay.
Well, there'll be a test tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll get up to speed.
Have a good night.
So yeah, take a look at it, see if you have any questions. And then sounds like we'll have a June meeting for another topic. And so then we can make our recommendation to the town board so it can make your July meeting. I think that the gist of it is, based on what I heard at our county meeting, that the state had updated their stuff and the county hadn't, and the county hadn't updated this stuff, so we hadn't. So it's been a trickle-down effect. So I really appreciate you printing this out and kind of reviewing it, because otherwise it's really hard to understand. You know, just talking about it at the meeting, it's nice to take a look at some of it. And as you're reading through it, think about, you know, our land use plan that we'll hopefully start getting to work on here now again, but like the river corridor, it's 300 feet from the high water mark, but in our township, it's 1,000 feet from the high water mark, and it's extended beyond just the lake, because we wanted to protect the waterways from quarries and feedlots, and so I think feedlots aren't. Well, you can't spread manure, I know.
New feedlots aren't permitted within the shoreland area,
Yeah.
or and expanding feedlots require conditional use permits in the shoreland area.
So when we say high water,
It's the normal elevation of the water. So if it's a waterway that fluctuates, we might use the top of the bank as a guide.
and the banks have changed with the dredging.
Yeah, I heard.
So
the
on the
water
lake,
level's
we have an ordinary high water mark from DNR. And so that's what we use for the ordinary high water mark there.
What happened to the banks? Is the dredging?
They're eroding.
Well, some of it's eroding and some of it, my shoreline, I have an extra 20 feet.
So some people are gaining.
Is that just because the water level is so
Because
low?
where they dredged and then they left, they didn't dredge to the shoreline.
Right.
So now they dredged to here and then there's a trickle of water that goes and then the shoreline. So my shoreline has really extended.
because the water level went down, right?
Well, it's just in the method of dredging, I think, is it? Huh?
Because it hasn't rained for.
Well,
It is pretty much dried up.
Well, it won't, it's flooded basically since the dredging, but it hasn't changed that mound of what they left there.
So some people are losing shoreline and some people are
And some,
gaining
yes.
shoreline. Interesting. Huh,
Based on the dredging.
huh.
Changing the water flow.
Yeah, and actually, we've looked at it just recently, and the channel comes out of Rochester. And then it's now looks like it might be coming, closer to my side, the shoreline, on my side versus how it had been.
It's causing more erosion.
Right, but there had been an island in front of my place that was created because of the sludge that came down, and it created a huge island. They took that island out now, left this mound in front of my place, and now the water seems to, instead of having the channel out this way, kind of does its
That way
own.
all the way along. I mean, like Lori down by you guys.
Down by us, I just noticed where they went along the shoreline and they did dredging, like all the boats that are able to come up there and they don't slow down, even though there's not the right width there for them to be under full power.
Right.
They do, and it's what it's doing, where I mow and I tootle along down there, I don't get too close because if you get off and look under, it's eroding under.
Yes.
The
Yeah,
mud
so-
is going out and I'm sure it's heading
Yep.
your way.
Yeah.
Cause the boats that are up there, they're just flying.
Which will fill in the lake
Yeah,
and
that's
Correct.
what's happening.
Yeah, and that's,
You can kind of see it already.
yes.
Like where my dock used to float and it was always 10 foot up by us, now is mine's sit on the bottom.
Yep.
Did they know that was gonna happen?
I don't think so.
Okay.
Yeah. We might have to
Spendy
take a pontoon
adventure.
ride
yeah.
and go do it. Maybe have to take a pontoon ride so everybody can see what's going on up there. Honestly.
Other than drinks?
Yeah. We'll do it off. You won't get paid for
But
the
it might
meeting.
be interesting to see
You know
how that
what,
is
we
changed.
actually did that with Sheldon. He had
Yeah.
county commissioners and some lawyers and township people.
Beforehand.
Yeah, and that's a great idea.
Because then you can see now,
What's happening?
did it improve and stuff
Hey, Beth?
somewhat, but I think there's.
Beth, are you still with us?
Are you on mute? Are we on mute?
No, she is though.
Yeah, I'm here, Paige. What's up?
So if we wanted to organize a pontoon ride so we can go take a look at the water line and the shoreline or the shore line, what would we have to do? Because I don't want to violate the open meeting law.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure how that would work because you would be limited in. That's a hard. I don't know. I'd have to check with Ben tomorrow because you have a boat. And you can only have so many people on a boat, but you have to have open to public to hear your conversation.
Yeah, there must be a way, because I know there's a special meeting.
Well, can't you do this? Can't we just call it a site visit where nothing's gonna be decided? Because township supervisors, we can go look at a road.
I mean, we did the
All
mine
together.
tour.
Right, you can, but it's when you get into your numbers and you're actually at a quorum. That's when we get into issues. I mean, if 2 of you went at a time, 3 of them, and you stayed under quorum, I think that makes a difference.
Yeah, but we did that tour out at Goldberg Quarry.
Right. And I'd have to look back and see what we did for that one, because I know we did do some type of notice. So the public was aware that you were meeting and gathering.
Yeah, I would think we could somehow post that it's just a site visit, like Charlie called it, or, it's not a discussion meeting.
We just did that on your road last week. And as long as we don't make a decision, we just look, according to our township lawyers, that's good. And all 3 supervisors were at that,
Okay.
so.
Yeah, so if you could just find out if we have to put a notice out that, what we have to do, and then I guess as a commission, we need to just find a date.
Okay.
We can maybe discuss it at our June meeting and set a date sometime this summer to go.
Can't be Lori's
Go
pontoon.
boating.
I got a bathroom.
First.
We got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
So, but that would be good. I think it would be beneficial. And you're welcome to come along if you guys want. But just like the tour that you guys gave us out at the quarry, that was very helpful to actually see it.
Yes.
Mhm.
You know, I'm sitting here listening to Alice and Lori describe what's happening, but until you actually see, it's hard to know. So,
When we talked about the dredging, I had Sheldon, I invited him to my house and I said, I want you to just see. He learned how to water ski in front of my house, he said,
Yeah.
years ago. There's no way. You can't stand in it and be up to your ankles right now, you know, or before the dredging. And he saw the island and he said, oh my gosh, I'm flabbergasted, not knowing, you know, I mean, they talked about the dredging, but not knowing what had to really go
That
to.
must be part of what he showed us then.
Yeah,
It was, and this was when all that stuff was coming off of the project the city was doing.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, because in the 80s, in 1982, we were building pyramids in front of Sandy Point and doing ski shows there. And we always called going up into Cedar Beach because it was always still up there. We'd do ballet.
Oh,
and
they
we'd barefoot. We
practice
called
up
it
there all the time.
Dream Acres up there back then, and it was clear. It was, and then over from the 80s till now, it's.
because Rochester did all their flood control.
Well, in the
sent
Oronoco.
all kinds of stuff this way.
Sure, an Oronoco Dam, you know, that created
Yeah.
a big, now with Silver Lake being, that's gonna be our next one. Now that we've dredged, now they're closing off or taking out the dam at Silver Lake, we're gonna get all that sludge of the geese.
But Silver Lake was only like 2 inches deep anyway, wasn't it?
It's the stuff that's in that's gonna come down. 'Cause
But it's
unless
all-
they're gonna dredge that out and take that out and then open the dam.
Yep, it's gonna,
When we skied at Silver Lake over the years, you fall there, you make
Keep
sure
your mouth
somebody,
shut.
well, and get your feet from going, you suck in and then you can't get out. If you fall from a high enough height.
Have they told you like how long they expect this dredging to last for before they have to do it again?
It's only been 2 years and there's a lot of change that's already happened.
it was never done
This is the
for
first
the
time.
expectations that we.
Okay.
We couldn't keep up with it, you know. Brennan and I talked to a couple of those guys several times
And
and
they said,
they would get done at Sandy Point and we had a couple of big rains and it would come back in and they'd get 4 more inches in there and they'd say, are you coming back to get that back out? And they said, no, we're done. And they keep moving.
yeah,
It didn't take much and it was filling in.
it was filling in and it's very evident.
So that assessment to all.
So
the
and as
property
the lake keeps filling in, your water will start to go back up because it can't go into the lake anymore.
Yeah, I don't know what the answer is there because you can't afford to dredge it over and over.
So is there any kind of liability on the part of the people that designed the dredging project? Where,
I don't think so because, you know, they came in and did what they said they do. And then right behind it, because there's nothing stopping it.
Yeah,
Right.
not responsible for what's upstream.
sure.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
I think we would have had half a chance if they went to taking that dam out here.
Yeah, the Oronoco Dam.
Hmm.
I remember at a meeting, I asked that, I said, will we be dredging first before the dam is removed or after? And they said, well, it won't make any difference. But
You know,
I'm not a dam remover, but.
I don't live on water, but I've got enough sense to figure that one out.
you know, my 12-year-old and I are these do the citizen science thing, water monitoring for the river that's just passed it here every week for the last few years. And it is we just did it yesterday. It hasn't rained. So our water clarity was 100, which is the best, crystal clear. But after a rain, sometimes it's 9.
Yeah.
There's so
I
much
should
stuff
say now do it after
on and
this,
off.
this week, because we're supposed to be getting all these and
Yeah.
big one on Friday, big
I'd
downpour.
be
Yeah.
curious after we get a big rain, what it is.
It has been 9 where you can't,
Well, what
there's
are they
so much
hedging on how
sediment
much was
that's
gonna be?
running off
Right.
into
It
the
didn't say how
water.
much.
Right.
So it is really, I think a lot of it's what happens when it rains.
Mhm.
But just think of how much stuff is now flowing into the lake that they just dredged.
Well, that's, yeah.
Well, and you think about, what was it, 2 years ago, we had that large flood where the
Yeah.
cattle were floating over here in Byron and everything. All of that's going somewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
All of
It
that's
is.
It
coming.
happens to pass us. And what
And
settles
it's
in.
whatever's, once it starts slowing down, when it comes around the bend,
Yeah, yep.
Yeah.
right in front of our place, we've got a little momentum when it hits that, curve there. And then it starts to get by Alice's and it slows way down. And then
Yeah.
that section again, I don't know how long you'll have.
You're welcome to my yard anytime. Come
Yeah.
see.
We have that too. We just collect porta potties.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I don't know what to do with the porta potties still. And
Still have-
Does it
Do you have a
still have
name
the
on it?
company name and?
I don't know. But I was gonna tell you, Charlie, now is a stellar time for river cleanup because the level is so low.
Yeah.
The tires are just sticking out everywhere. Like you can see everything really, really easily until it, fills back up. But if this lack of, I think I've gotten a quarter of an inch in 6 weeks or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, you got more than I did.
Yep.
I turned my rain gauge over and I'm lucky if one drop comes out.
Dust.
It just keeps
Yeah.
doing this like splitting. Oh, we're gonna go right around you. Anyway, it's a good time to figure out tires.
Well,
out of the
we're
way.
actually looking at funding that. We're getting mixed messages from our township lawyer about whether we can or not,
Okay.
Is that based on the disposal of what you pull out?
I'm sorry?
Is that based on the disposal of the items you pull out kind of thing?
Well, no, this is more on what they want us to do. That there's the annual meeting every March. They want us to wait till the annual meeting and have citizens request it
Oh.
and make that part of our plan for the following year. So, in my mind, citizens have requested it.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this,
Like
would
requested it.
would a recommendation from the planning and zoning help?
I don't know.
Without having to wait till the March meeting? What if?
Oh, they're recording us?
Yep.
Okay, I don't know if
Okay,
it's under discussion.
okay.
It might help, but
Well, we can come back to that.
yeah.
So you got, like I said, got your reading material. We'll, we'll make a recommendation at our June meeting. And then, set a date. See if we can come up with a date. So bring if Mondays in general are good, we can maybe do it on a Monday. For me, Mondays are usually open, so I don't know everybody else's schedules, but I know the first Monday is out, first Tuesday is out. Right, but, okay,
Did we need to initiate a text amendment tonight?
Yes, please.
so if somebody wants to make,
I would move to initiate the text amendment for the Oronoco Township shoreland update.
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rucker and a second by Ms. Smith to initiate the shoreland ordinance update. All in favor, say aye.
Right.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Anything else you guys want to bring up while we're here?
I have a question for Christy about the junkyard. So it has gone on the market for sale for $900,000.
The what is?
The junkyard.
The
How,
township side,
the township side,
the city side is 350.
We're talking about the old Oronoco Auto
Yeah.
Parts.
yeah,
Thing, right?
yeah. So my question is, assuming anyone buys that, spends $1 million on that, like, because of our river ordinance, what can possibly go there? I mean, isn't
Right.
1,000 feet to the road essentially?
Yep, your river corridor area would cover that entire property. There are some uses in because it's zoned industrial currently, and there are some uses in the industrial district that are prohibited by your ordinance that I don't think would be That would be considered light industrial, like a storage facility, maybe a warehouse. Anything that they would build would have to meet floodplain regulations and shoreland regulations, but it can't be a junkyard again. I haven't received any phone calls from potential buyers on it, so there's that.
Is that what it's worth? I
Well, maybe
mean,
they can use
I'm
that.
not an appraiser.
Wow. They might get that if they would clean it up first.
They're still in the middle of a legal process with the PCA. Because once a month I get an email from them saying, nothing's changed, it's secret, we can't tell you any more than that. And this
How
has
can
been
they
going
sell
on.
it?
can they,
with
you can build
contingencies?
something even though it's the 1,000-foot setback?
It's not a 1,000-foot setback. It's a 1,000-foot overlay that your river corridor district applies. And so within that 1,000-foot overlay area, then shoreline standards apply. Like the setback to the ordinary headwater mark is 150 feet, but the floodplain pushes it back. So it's on the top of the hill there.
But say if they wanted to do a quarry, they'd have to do it outside that 1,000-foot
Right,
setback.
right. That they wouldn't be able to do a
Right.
quarry there.
If somebody bought it in the state that it is currently in, are they required to clean it up?
That's a good question. I really can't answer that. All I know is that we've determined that it hasn't been a junkyard for more than a year, so it's no longer, it lost its non-conforming status.
Okay. What about safety issues? So that fence is falling down, its stuff is spilling out. I mean, just think like, guys, some 10-year-old is gonna walk right in there. So, you know, I mean, that's what 10-year-olds do. Maybe not nowadays. That's what we would have done when I was a kid. I mean, and there's just all sorts of hazardous stuff in there. There is nothing to keep people out of there right now. Is that an issue? I mean, does it have to be fenced?
Well, yeah, but again, this is what's going on. This is between MPCA
Okay.
and the guys that own it. You know, the township, we can't make them clean that up, apparently. And they won't even tell us what exactly it is they're fighting with them about. Because it's an ongoing process. All they can basically say is they're in the process. So, and we've expressed our desire to have the fence replaced. And, we point out every spring, now granted, this year is probably not gonna be a big deal. But, we've had a couple big rains in the spring, the one that caused the flooding to begin with. And that fence isn't gonna hold anything. The only thing that's different really is they have moved a lot of stuff out.
That's true.
So there's not as much stuff to end up in the water or in the ditches. But we don't have any control over them.
Well, if it's in litigation, they're not gonna talk to you about it either.
Right. And just your other question, Tammy has asked them, how can they sell it without cleaning it up first? And we haven't gotten a response. So
Okay,
when I find out, I'll send you an email.
okay, thanks.
Speaking of fences though, did anybody go out and look at that quarry on 75th Street? 100th Street?
100th Street.
100.
It's right next to the K&K pit.
Yeah,
I
there,
believe there was a guy out there this spring, within the last month, looking at the fence. I'm assuming that Matthew has probably hired somebody to.
Is that, it's
address
not the
that.
K&K pit,
It's
it's
a Matthew pit.
yeah.
immediately east of the K&K pit.
Yeah, the
It
gates
looked
are
like there
closed. I
was-
went and looked at the gates, they're closed.
Yeah, but
The high tensile wire. is
where
proposed.
there's some small trees and stuff, and there's some sections that are, some of them are kind of tilted and down, and there was one area that I couldn't see the fencing at all, but.
And the deal is kids and stuff are going in there.
Well, that was a requirement on all our pits, was to keep it fenced, because I can't see the bottom of that hole when I drive by, so I want to make sure that there's a fence up. Not that it'll keep people out, but at least we're making the effort.
Alright, I can have them come up. They're-
Yeah, and there's no sign, so I didn't know if it was one of your guys or not, but I don't know
Not
who,
active.
the K&K pit.
Is that the one that the city is line part of?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's why it's not, I don't know that it's technically
Well, this is to the east farther.
further.
Yeah, because the K and
I'll have to
K
go out and look at
pit
it.
says Olmsted
County
County
aggregate.
aggregate or something on it.
This is
Right.
just to the east of
Just to
that.
the east.
And I
It's
didn't
where the
know-
gates are closed now, but
Yep.
I
Yes,
looked at that, because all of our pits,
See,
all of ours have a sign on them.
Yeah,
That
and I
was-
that one
didn't know,
They bought that from Keene 8 years ago.
And it's just sitting.
Is that 70 acres?
I think that's the parcel, yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then the
see,
10.
I didn't know if- without looking at it from above, for all I knew, was part of K and K that came up from the south side, and you just couldn't see the connection between the two, but,
I can let Ryan know too.
Yeah.
look at her.
wow.
So it'd be in
So,
section
like-
21, no, to the north just a little bit, now to the west,
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah,
So it's basically from the house driveway,
This one?
yeah, from there to the west.
I didn't even know there was anything.
Yeah, there's one little gate there. Because there's K and K.
over here, right? This is K and K?
No, farther,
The
This
west,
one's
Yeah.
K and K?
that one's K
That
and
one's
K.
K and K.
yeah.
Yeah, so
How
it
many
must be
are
this,
there?
like, this
Yeah.
guy right there,
Yeah,
whatever that is,
1, 2,
has fence down on it.
Okay.
Okay. I can have Rob go out there too.
So that's interesting. They had to drive a long way to get out of there, didn't they?
that's where their scale is at, is up on top there.
I mean, look at where the drive goes,
Mhm.
and it kind of loops down and back out and around. Anyway, it's right up there along the road that I noticed the fence was down.
Okay.
Okay.
It's not like the whole thing is down, there's just a few sections that need a little TLC on them, I think. But I don't know if it's even.
Rob about this or?
No, I can, no, I'll,
Yeah, so there's the
I'll
gate.
send him an
Right
email
straight up
tomorrow.
from her deal.
because
They'll have a sign
I know
there,
he'll
so
be
the
back in the
sign's down
office
by
on
the-
Wednesday.
Is there further?
There's no sign,
That's why I couldn't figure
no
out,
sign on those.
that's why I couldn't
Yeah,
figure out
Charlie.
who it belonged to.
They-
Septic as
Matthew's
well.
never pulled anything out.
Oh, is it?
That's why I'll have to see. They must have bought the land and left it
I know the
sit.
neighbor.
Because otherwise, any one of our mines,
Is
the
selling
active one or
the one
any of the
that
other ones,
Tom-
properties.
Yeah,
So
right.
that's just land.
And
that-
so anyway,
That's
he's
just
selling
land.
his place, but he
There's-
said I
there's
went
a-
and looked
there's a
out
lot
there
of
the
rock
other day
there.
and he's, we haven't had rain.
Well, then they
Any
won't, we
rain.
can fix the fence.
And there, so he was calling Chad
Okay.
County.
Yeah, I should maybe have Pat go
Yeah,
look
that's
at it.
Matthew Construction,
So,
see that?
Here, I better
I
make
got
a
it.
note to myself.
What did that say? You had yeah. So it is Matthew,
I'll have-
155 acres.
I will have someone check it out tomorrow.
I don't mean to be a pain, but
Well, somebody can
Is
check
it
it.
on
They'll
both
check it
sides of
tomorrow.
that mound?
I don't think so. I think it's
I mean,
more
if
on
we're-
the house side,
Yeah.
not the,
And like I said, I don't think it's even
I-
used. I mean,
as far
there's
as I know,
not-
I
That's why
haven't gone
they
out
all sudden
and looked. He just told me
Then the
Saturday.
land was purchased.
Yeah.
and he, because he's selling his
Is-
place,
is
he
it on
said, I
the-
just kind
on
of
the
wanted to
field
walk
side?
out there and see, and he
To
said,
the east, if the digger guy might hit
I
that,
said,
might.
no, I said, I don't know where.
They can not.
Yeah, really.
We'll have to look at that.
My
Okay.
son might hit the end post this spring.
Find out.
Maybe I can have him look at
All
it.
right, so I will talk to them tomorrow about fixing the fence.
Kind of like the tree guys when
They're
they
leaving
came
out
last summer.
No, they can-
They went to dump the brush,
It's not.
the big logs on our brush pile.
Yeah,
And all of a sudden, a couple days later, I noticed there was a fence post leaning up in our horseshoe pit.
Do you want,
Kind of ran it over.
do you want me to let you know that somebody's gonna go out and do that? Okay.
Yeah, that'd be great, River.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking
I'll
on
do it
that.
tomorrow. Come on. That's all. 21.
City council meeting.
I don't know when that
Because
It would,
it's
Oh,
been-
I think it's back when we
Yeah.
did the 52 work.
Okay.
So
Yeah, there's a conditional use permit on that
It's not
property. I
directly affecting the township.
Go back
like-
to the
Like the Tannerite did.
2000 sometime, early
Yeah, so
2000s.
my question is, we put, so how would that work? If we, because I think that was Mark's key.
Yeah, Steve Jeck is the one that was pulling this,
Yeah.
the rock out of it.
So the conditional use should have had a reclamation or plan
Mhm.
attached to it. But if they sold it to Matthew,
Mhm.
are they now responsible for that reclamation plan?
Yep.
So that transfers with,
Is there a, like, how, so if someone buys it to like leave their options open for the future, like, is there a statute after which like you don't? years, then-
we're sitting on a whole pile of rock.
No, because, I mean,
I think
Or
that's.
shoreland thing.
I can answer that.
I'd have to measure what.
I got experience with this one. What they do, if it's been mined, then it can stay being mined.
yeah,
Because there was, well, we saw, when the Blue Goose Quarry,
Maybe they can still get material out
the
of
one we
it.
looked at last year or 2 years ago.
No, yeah.
And actually, the back
There's a field right on the corner of
Front is
75th,
kind of that.
20th Avenue Northeast. It
Pulled it out.
was a farmhouse.
It's a good rock.
Initially, they
I had
kept
some
the
on
gate.
there, so it just, it doesn't hold up. It just
Go through the
crumbles.
conditional use process. And
Do
they
they
came
ever
back with
have,
photographs from like
Built and
40.
stuff that they need to get rid
Yeah,
of.
we can, because we bought it. It was a mine then, it's a mine now. And the county backed off. So I think if it's being mined, or if it's been mined,
Is at the discretion of
it's
the.
It's like, come on,
it stays mined.
Well, and the thing is, what's good today is the mining standards and the way that they reclaim after those
Yeah.
are so much different than back in the 40s.
Mhm.
It's an improvement, actually, in a lot of cases.
Oh, yeah.
And I think
Yeah.
Goldberg, I think, was the only one that we had anymore that was existing and active,
Yeah.
but had no reclamation plan attached to it. Because it was been here forever. But,
So we should probably.
yeah,
Yeah, I'll
Do we
move
have-
to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
did I hear a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Mr. Rucker and a second by Ms. Flood to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye. Thanks.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you for
Go to YouTube.
Yeah, that's nice.
Let